In this next segment, I'm going to model to you how to set up a facilitation moment for the opening session of a GLS. You would have already had your summit opener, some engaging worship, perhaps a greeting from the host pastor or Bill Hybels, but there'll come a moment when you will walk up on stage as the facilitator and you'll want to explain to the delegates the process and the journey you're going to take them on. Well, welcome to the GLS, everyone. What an amazing morning we've had. It is so exciting to see you all here and to see you so ready for these next 2 days. I'm going to be your facilitator. My name's Karen Wilson. It's a privilege for me to be able to journey with you over these next 2 days. These sessions are going to touch your heart. They're going to evoke conversation. They're going to evoke emotion. You're going to go through all sorts of feelings, and we're going to do it together. So I'm going to invite you to just leave your world behind. Some of you have come from crazy mornings or very busy weeks, and right now just shrug it off, just leave it behind and settle down, because we're going to have 2 incredible days. In fact, if you fully engage, these 2 days, I promise you, will change your life. These 2 days have the potential to reshape and to reform some of your thinking. They will definitely inspire you, and they will definitely give you the drive you need for the next season in your leadership. So leave your work behind, accept the challenges that are given to you, and enter fully into what you're going to be hearing. The best way we can do that sometimes is on our own. There will be times when we're going to give you to just reflect, to allow the Spirit of God to just gently touch you and speak quietly to you. But then you and I know there are times when we learn best by interacting with other people. So what we're going to do is have some moments in this summit where you'll be engaged with just small groups of people, talking through some of the learning, some of the ways that your heart's been touched, some of the challenges, and some of the things that you need to get your head around. How we're going to do that right at the beginning of the summit is we're going to form those groups. So all over this auditorium, wherever you are, have a little look around you, and there'll be 2 or 3 people right close to you that I'm going to ask you just in a moment when I release you to form those groups, and ask them how their day's been. Ask them how their morning's been. But in some way, just connect, and they're the people over the next day that you're going to be able to share with and journey with throughout the GLS. So why don't you turn around right now, and wherever you are, just find little groups of 3 or 4, and just get to know them. Shake their hand, welcome them, and just ask them how their morning's been. It looks like you've done a great job forming those groups. Is there anybody here who's just on their own and hasn't quite connected with someone? Then just make sure you nuzzle in with the group there, and we don't want anybody left out. Group leaders, look around you and just make sure everybody's covered. Okay, if you've moved, just turn your chairs around and just face me again, because they're the groups that at some time during the day today we're going to ask you to form them. But for now, what I'd like to do is just really encourage you to engage in the session you're about to see. There are going to be times in these speakers where they're going to ask you to do things. Perhaps you will want to spontaneously applaud. Some of you will be so excited by what you hear that you will just want to respond some way physically. Feel free. Just go ahead. Other times you might be asked to raise your hand to respond to something or to do a particular action. What I would encourage you is to respond to what you are seeing. You also have a notebook that you would have been handed as you walked in the door. This is an amazing tool for you. This notebook is going to have an outline of every session. So for you who are taking notes, it's half done for you, so you'll be happy about that. But it's also a process tool that we're not going to cover in the whole day today. What our hope is that you take this home, particularly senior leaders who have teams here, you would unpack this over a course of 12 months and the learnings that you have. I've done this with my staff, and my husband and I have led every single staff meeting for a month where we've unpacked the learnings of sessions, and it's had a profound impact on the staff. So I'd encourage you to use this as a tool. It's not just for taking notes, it's going to be a journal, it's going to be a resource for you for the year to come, and it's a valuable part of this summit. Our first speaker this morning is Pastor Bill Hybels. He's the founding and senior pastor of Willow Creek Community Church. Since 1995, he's had a passion for training leaders all over the world. And this morning he's going to speak to us about how to get from here to there and everything in between. Please welcome Pastor Bill Hybels.
Well, Karen, you made that look easy to set up a session like that and then also to facilitate at the end. What I'd like to do is if we could unpack some of the things that went on behind the scenes. And let's start at the top. When you first introduced the speaker or talked about what they're going to experience, you never once said the word DVD. I don't believe you said the word video. Why would you not do that? Because that's really what it is.
Yeah, I think the facilitator is the key person to create the illusion that we're live. People who are sitting at summit sites all over the world don't want to feel like they're watching a reproduced DVD from another conference.
Yeah.
So it was hard to do this, I must say, at first. I would slip up a few times and say, let's watch the DVD or let's watch the screen. So I had to really train myself. Let's welcome the next speaker. And in most countries, people applaud. So as I would say, welcome Bill Hybels, the whole place would clap. In some Asian countries, they have practiced clapping. It works in different cultures. But if you can create the idea that the speaker is here with you,
Great.
It takes them 5 minutes to forget that he's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you talked about engagement. You really asked people, as we would say, you talked about the elephant in the room. Well, there is no live speaker on our stage. So what do we do about that?
You know, initially, as a facilitator, I've gotten around our team and asked them to model engagement. So all of your programming team, your worship team, you know, your staff on your church, your steering committee, ask them beforehand. So if your speaker says, you know, anyone around the world believe what I'm saying, raise your hand. Well, then ask, you know, you could set people in the crowd at first, and people very quickly respond. But I've seen this happen spontaneously, people laughing, people applauding. I think one of the funniest things was one day I had a man come up to me in the break with the book of one of the speakers and said, do you think you could possibly get the speaker in the speaker's room to sign this for me? And he had no idea, or he'd just forgotten that the speaker was on a DVD. He wasn't there live. And I thought, that's when I realized we'd actually achieved our goal.
I love hearing those stories because we have them from all corners of the world now, that people just are fully engaged in what goes on. You ask people to join up in groups, and sometimes with teams, sometimes with strangers. Let's talk about that a second.
I think it's really important. They need to make a connection with each other and realize they're not just going to journey alone over these 2 days. And by doing it really early in the first session, there's a lot of energy in the room. They're not in a moment. I think a mistake we make sometimes is to wait till the end of a session, at the end of a speaker, when we're wanting them to engage, and then we create chaos in the room as they find who they're going to talk to.
And then they forget about what they're talking about.
They do, and you lose the moment. Remember, we've spoken about holding the moment. So by doing it then, it's almost like a mix around, a welcome, they're a gathering, they're built community, and it's so easy for me at the end of a session to say, turn to those 4 people and share, and we're ready to go.
And then you talked about the notebook, almost like a tool.
It is, yeah.
And let's kind of revisit that a little bit, because so many conferences, what we don't want the GLS to become is another conference notebook tucked away on a shelf. So how do we engage people on that level? I
think what you have to do as a facilitator is you have to get them working in this right from the very beginning. If it's just tucked in their conference bag, they have to find it themselves, it's not going to work. So you'll choose 1 or 2, maximum 3 questions that they will use for the process time. But they'll see in here there's 10 or 11, or there are graphs to fill out, or all sorts of things. But we want to get them already working in this. Plus, it's got the outline. The staff, the GLS staff, have spent a lot of time crafting this, wordsmithing it. I think personally the questions are outstanding, and they lead us exactly where we want to go. So sit as a team with your producer and maybe your host pastor and choose exactly what 1 or 2 questions that you think will be relevant for your site. And then mostly you'd start with a heart question, something for them to reflect. Give them a moment. After hearing a speaker, they need to breathe, take it in. And I would Typically give them a minute or two just to reflect, and then if it is a group session, we'll move into the group time, and there's a lot of energy if this is used well. If it's not, we lose 40% of the impact, I think, of the summit.
And you did a very simple setup of the keynote speaker. Doesn't have to be long.
No.
And something that is said without saying it, Karen was just normal. You know, she's just herself on stage, which is very important. Is you want to put the audience at ease. You want to be just another person experiencing this along. It doesn't have to be the leader or the pastoral voice commanding the stage. It needs to be more relating to the audience and connecting them to this whole thing that we call the GLS.
Definitely. There are other roles. Your host pastor, if he's not or she's not facilitating, she'll take a certain lead. You also have an MC or a host that will send them to breaks, and the facilitator holds unique relational connection with the delegates, and you want to hold that. Don't mix the roles, but just hold that place through the summit, and it will be very effective.
And your role as a facilitator is actually seen as the leader or the person who is carrying this whole event. So maybe you won't feel it the first time up for that first session, but as time goes on, people will come to respect you, come to look forward to having you be on stage because they know you're taking them someplace.
Exactly.
Great beginning.